The courtroom was quiet, thick with condescension masked as procedure, the air barely stirred by the faint hum of the overhead lights. The black man in the wrinkled gray suit stood at the defendant's table, hands folded, chin high, not out of arrogance, but necessity. His name was Elijah Cross. 32. Soft-spoken. Alone. The judge, Reginald P. Abernethy, leaned back in his leather chair, eyes gleaming with the smugness of unchecked power. He chuckled, audibly, when Elijah announced he'd be representing himself. "Oh, this should be good," Abernethy said, not bothering to muffle his derision. The prosecutor, Claire Danvers, didn't laugh. She didn't need to. The look she gave Elijah was worse than laughter. It was dismissal, pure and surgical. Elijah, arrested on charges of obstruction and interfering with a federal investigation, had become a symbol in a town where symbols didn't survive long. He was accused of accessing sealed documents tied to a local corruption case. What they didn't know was why he accessed them, or who he really was. Elijah didn't stutter as he opened his mouth. "Your Honor, if I may begin with a motion to dismiss under Rule 12(b)(6), on the basis that the state has failed to state a claim upon which relief can be granted." The courtroom stiffened. Abernethy blinked. Claire raised an eyebrow. Elijah continued, his voice steady, his hands now moving with precision as he pulled documents from his satchel. Not a briefcase, not leather-bound, just a weathered canvas bag like a student might carry. He spoke of precedent. He quoted Ashcroft versus Iqbal, Bell Atlantic versus Twombly, fluently, rhythmically, as though he'd lived inside those decisions. Then he dissected the state's evidence, point by point, revealing how the files he was accused of stealing were public records mislabeled as classified, deliberately concealed to protect Judge Abernethy himself. That name, Abernethy, hung in the room like a blade. Elijah didn't flinch. "Your Honor," he said, turning toward the bench with slow deliberation, "you were a named party in an investigation closed last year under suspicious circumstances. This," he held up a file, "is a sworn affidavit by Assistant U.S. Attorney Melinda Kraft, your former clerk, detailing your interference in at least 3 whistleblower cases, including the prosecution of Marcus Tillman, my brother." His voice cracked, just once, and the room exhaled as if realizing it had been holding its breath. Claire Danvers objected, stammering something about relevance, but it was too late. Elijah had activated something raw. Abernethy turned red. Not with shame, but rage. "This is a circus," he bellowed. "You think you're going to waltz in here and slander this court with baseless accusations? You people think the law is a game." Elijah didn't wait. "You people, Your Honor." He paused. "That's exactly the language you used when sentencing my brother to 15 years for a crime you knew he didn't commit. I was there, in the back. I was 16. You laughed then too." Claire was frozen. Not out of fear, but calculation. She was beginning to sense the shift, the way a seasoned predator knows the wind has changed. Elijah reached for one last document. It was sealed, until now. Exhibit G. A bar admission letter. Mine. Yale Law School. Magna cum laude. Top of my class. Clerked under Justice Alvarez. You remember him, Your Honor. The one who wrote the opinion calling your ethics deeply compromised. There was no sound. Just that low buzz again. Those humming lights that had once masked Abernethy's control now seemed to highlight his unraveling. Elijah's composure didn't crack. "I disguised my identity for one reason. Not to trick you. But to make you treat me the way you treated my brother. The way you treat every poor black defendant that walks into your courtroom, like they're stupid. Like they're beneath you. Like justice is a game rigged only you can win." Abernethy tried to regain control, slamming his gavel. "This is contempt. Bailiff, remove him from my court." But the bailiff didn't move. Elijah turned to Claire. "You received the same evidence I did. You knew the charges were fake. You went along with it. Why?" Claire hesitated. Her mouth twitched. Her voice, when it finally came, was thin. "Because I thought he'd lose." "Because you counted on me being angry and reckless," Elijah said. "But I waited. I studied. I built this case for 9 years. And now, I've filed judicial misconduct charges. Not just against Abernathy, but against you. The courtroom door opened. 2 men in dark suits entered, federal marshals. Judge Reginald Abernathy, you are hereby placed under investigation for obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and ethics violations. The gavel didn't save him. Abernathy's laugh was gone. Claire sat down, hard, pale and silent. Elijah didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just gathered his papers and turned to the gallery. My brother died in prison, he said quietly. He didn't live to see this. His eyes glistened, not with pride, but with a justice that had come far too late. But I did. The marshals walked Abernathy out as cameras snapped, reporters shouted, and the tide shifted beneath their feet. Outside, as Elijah stepped onto the courthouse steps, a woman approached. Late 50s. Nervous. She handed him a note. He told me to give this to you if you ever found the truth, she whispered. It was handwritten. A simple page. You were right. But there's more. Much more. Abernathy was just the face. The real power sits deeper. They call themselves the Order. And they know who you are now. Elijah looked up. The woman was already walking away. And just behind her, across the street, a black SUV sat idle. Engine running. A silhouette inside. Watching. Elijah Cross stood frozen on the courthouse steps, the page trembling in his hand as the name, the Order, burned into his mind like a brand. The SUV didn't move. Tinted windows like black mirrors reflected his image back at him, one man standing against the weight of a shadow no courtroom could contain. The media had already begun their frenzy, lights flashing, microphones extended, but Elijah couldn't hear any of it. His world had shrunk to the scrawl of handwriting and that still, silent vehicle that hadn't left since Judge Abernathy had been taken away. Inside the courthouse, Claire Danvers had vanished. Slipped away before the press could question her, before anyone could connect the dots Elijah had so meticulously laid out. She had seen the note too. From the corner of her eye. And her expression had changed, not just fear. Recognition. Elijah knew that look. He'd worn it himself when he first discovered the files that showed how his brother, Marcus, had been framed. That same haunted disbelief, the kind that meant the lie was so big, it wrapped around the truth like chains. He didn't go home. He couldn't. Instead, he walked. Through rain-slicked streets, past shuttered storefronts and forgotten corners of a city that never wanted him to exist. He found himself at the tiny, run-down office he'd once used to tutor kids in the neighborhood. A place his brother had built brick by brick with borrowed money and blooded knuckles. Elijah opened the door and stepped into silence. That's when the voice came. You made a lot of noise today, counselor. He spun around, fists ready, but the man in the shadows didn't flinch. Black suit. Calm smile. Eyes that didn't blink often. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to offer clarity. Start talking. Elijah's voice was low, but sharp. The Order isn't some myth. It's real. It's not a club, it's a syndicate. Judges, attorneys, law enforcement, even senators. Abernathy was low-level. Disposable. That's why they let you take him. They let me? Elijah asked, incredulous. You were their distraction. The man stepped forward. While you tore down one corrupt judge, they erased 3 files, moved 2 informants, and staged a suicide. Elijah's stomach dropped. My brother, he died in prison. They said it was a fight. The man nodded slowly. He was getting too loud. He tried to send you that note 3 years ago. They intercepted it. Elijah's throat tightened. And you? He asked. Why are you telling me this? The man's face darkened. Because I was in the Order. Until I saw what they did to my niece. She found something. They silenced her. She didn't even get a trial. I've been waiting for someone like you. Elijah narrowed his eyes. What do you want from me? Just this. The man placed a flash drive on the table. It's a list. Names, dates, payments. Everything. But if you use it, they'll come for you. They don't play by the law. They own it. Elijah stared at the drive. The weight of it felt heavier than any verdict he'd ever read. I've already made my choice, he said finally. The man gave a sad smile. Then you better be ready to burn your name off the door. Because once this starts, there's no bar license, no courtroom, no press conference that'll keep you safe. The man turned and disappeared into the shadows. Elijah didn't sleep. He sat in the dark, poring through the files. Dozens of names. People whose lives had been derailed by carefully orchestrated injustice. The pattern was clear: black defendants, immigrant families, whistleblowers, all crushed by a system that wore a robe and carried a gavel. One name made his blood run cold. Claire Danvers. Not just complicit. A founding member. The woman who had smiled as she buried his brother. The woman who had watched him from across the courtroom, knowing exactly who he was and what he'd lost. The next morning, Elijah called a press conference of his own. Small venue. No cameras. Just a room full of trusted reporters and a single USB drive. He laid it all out: the order, the hidden files, the names. What do you hope to gain? One reporter asked. Elijah met her gaze. Justice. The kind my brother never got. He walked out before the questions began. By noon, the story had started to spread. Quietly. Carefully. The mainstream outlets wouldn't touch it, yet. But whispers had power, especially when the right people started listening. Then the threats began. His email was hacked. A fake arrest warrant showed up at his old apartment. His old law school friend went missing. That evening, he returned to his brother's gravesite. He knelt. I got them, Marcus. But it's not over. He stood up, heart pounding. Behind him, headlights blinked twice. Another SUV. This time, it wasn't parked. It was coming fast. Elijah barely had time to turn before tires screeched and the vehicle skidded sideways, stopping inches from his knees. The window rolled down. Claire Danvers sat behind the wheel. No cameras. No courtrooms. Just you and me now, she said, her voice cold and calm. Elijah stared at her. She smiled. I'm here to offer you a deal. Rain clung to Elijah Cross's jacket as he stood frozen before the SUV. The cemetery wind howled behind him like a warning whispered through time. Claire Danvers' eyes locked with his from behind the wheel, serene, composed, lethal. I'm not here to threaten you, she said, voice slicing the silence. I'm here to make you an offer. Elijah didn't flinch. You shouldn't have come here. Claire stepped out of the SUV, her heels sinking slightly into the wet gravel. You think you've won. You think exposing Judge Abernathy did something. It didn't. That was a ritual sacrifice. The order needed a clean break, and you were the scalpel. I exposed corruption. I buried a monster. No, she said with a quiet smirk, you fed the beast. Claire reached into her coat and produced a sealed envelope. She held it out, calm as a surgeon. Elijah didn't take it. That, she continued, is a federal appointment. A seat on the Justice Oversight Committee. It comes with influence. Silence. And a clean slate. Elijah stared at her, the weight of his brother's memory pounding in his chest like a second heartbeat. You want to buy me? Claire shrugged. I'm giving you a choice. Keep swinging at giants, or become one. You can shape the system from within. Or let it crush you. You've made noise, but we control the silence. A beat passed. Then Elijah slowly reached out and took the envelope. He opened it, scanned the contents. His name was already printed, Elijah S. Cross, Esquire, above a gold seal. It was legitimate. I'll consider it, he said. Claire smiled and turned to leave. You're smarter than your brother ever was. Don't waste it. Elijah watched the SUV disappear into the mist before returning to his apartment. He locked the door behind him, peeled off his soaked jacket, and stared at the envelope on the table. 1,000 memories screamed at him. Marcus behind bars, his mother crying in the courtroom, his own childhood marked by cold stares and slammed doors. He opened his laptop. Plugged in the flash drive. Within an hour, encrypted files were copied to 3 separate journalists across the country. The real story. Every name. Every transaction. The full scope of the order. Then he burned the envelope. The fire hissed, consuming the paper like it was hungry for vengeance. The backlash was nuclear. Claire Danvers was indicted. Not just disbarred, charged under RICO statutes. Federal agents raided courthouses, law firms, even 2 state senator offices. And then, the breaking headline that sent the country into chaos. Elite underground network of judges and lawyers exposed in largest corruption scandal in U.S. legal history. Elijah was thrust into the spotlight. Some hailed him as a hero. Others called him a traitor to the legal fraternity. He didn't care. Because for the first time in years, he stood at his brother's grave and felt peace. Justice isn't a verdict, he whispered. It's a war. And we just won the first battle. 2 weeks later, as the dust began to settle, Elijah received a letter. No return address. No postage. Inside, 1 sentence. There is no such thing as justice, only vengeance that delays its hunger. Tucked inside the envelope was a black chess king. Cracked. Burnt. But still standing. Elijah's hands trembled. He thought it was over. But the order wasn't dead. They had just crowned a new player.